Hello, everybody. Very welcome to our webinar today on the interaction of the MDR, the AI Act, and data protection in medical technology. Very happy that so many came here and registered for this free webinar. First, I would like to introduce the speakers today. There's Afra Nickel. She's an associate in our digital health team at SKW Schwarz, and she's specializing inter alia in AI regulatory affairs. Then we have Fabian Bauer. He's an IT and data protection specialist, in particular concerning health data. And myself, my name is Oliver Stöckel. I'm heading the digital health team of SKW Schwarz, and I'm also heading the IP team. So this is our agenda for today. First, we will give an introduction to the topic, and we will present two fictitious use cases to make the assessment a bit more practical. Then we'll talk about the relationship between the MDR and IVDR and the AI Act. Then Fabian will speak about data protection and AI. In the end, we will come up with a wrap-up and with a conclusion of what is important for medtech companies in this magical triangle. And finally, which you will then get when you have the slide deck, some supplementary information which you may find useful. So to give you a quick introduction to the topic, what is relevant concerning this magic triangle, AI in medical technology plays an important role even today. We have a shortage of specialists in hospitals and private practices, and the pressure to be efficient is ever increasing. And there's a high demand on the speed and efficiency of diagnostics and therapy. Many experts agree that AI will be revolutionary in medical research, medical development, and in healthcare in general, and that the use of AI leads to new methods and opportunities in the field of healthcare and life sciences. But at the same time, there are a lot of risks that need to be taken into account. We've all experienced, like ChatGPT, hallucinating about certain things. So there's some new risks introduced by AI that need not to be overlooked. At the same time, we have the MDR and IVDR regulation that needs to be taken into account. We have data protection requirements for all the training data and also for the data that are generated by medical devices using AI. And then we have the new requirements of the European AI Act, and all comes together as a magic triangle of three main aspects of regulatory affairs for medtech products with AI. And so the questions arise. What exactly is the interaction of these various regulatory requirements? What are the similarities and the differences between the respective requirements? What role does it play for the CE certification of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics using AI? And how can companies develop a project plan for the use of AI in medical technology?
Thank you, Oliver. So, but what does this mean in practice? How could the relationship between the regulatory affairs, AI, and data protection actually play out? To demonstrate this in a practical way, we will present you two AI medical devices as possible use cases. The first use case is Blusser. Blusser is a blood pressure monitor and contains AI software that is embedded in the medical device. Blusser is used by patients at home. The software in Blusser evaluates the measured blood pressure values and their progression to draw conclusions about possible pathological conditions. So if such a condition is detected, the software alerts the patient and prompts him to have a medical examination. So in this way, the AI integrated in Blaster performs preventive diagnostics. The manufacturer creates updates for the software, and the patients can then download these updates themselves via Wi-Fi and the home network and install them on the device. The second use case is the software Neoplasky. Neoplasky is used in cancer diagnostics. It is a standalone software, so it's an independent device that is supplied without hardware. It can be installed on any PC and contains a dynamic AI system. Neoplasky is designed to create an independent initial diagnosis in order to relieve radiologists in their work. So to do this, the software analyzes mammography images and also takes into account the development of the progression by comparing previous images with current ones. The diagnosis is then checked and verified by a radiologist, and Neoplasky continuously improves and constantly learns. But when is a medical device or an IVD an AI system within the meaning of the AI Act? According to Article 3, Paragraph 1 of the AI Act, an AI system means a machine-based system that is designed to operate with varying levels of autonomy and that may exhibit adaptiveness after deployment, and that for explicit or implicit objectives infers from the input it receives how to generate outputs such as predictions, content, recommendations, or decisions that can influence physical or virtual environments. So AI systems are software-based. Consequently, medical devices or IVD that are operated without software do not fall under the definition of an AI system. Conversely, medical devices or IVD with software are not automatically regulated by the AI Act. An AI system differs from such simple software in that the AI system not only processes predefined program sequences, for example, programmed if-then links, but also has the ability to learn, draw its own conclusions, or carry out modeling autonomously. A medical device or IVD can already be an independent AI system. However, AI systems can also be components of medical devices or IVD alongside other components, either without fixed integration or as an integrated embedded system. Both use cases, Blaster and Neoplasky, are AI systems within the meaning of the AI Act. The software Neoplasky is an AI-supported diagnostic software, and thus, as a standalone software, an AI system. The AI system in Blaster is a component of a medical device. It contains an AI-supported evaluation software that is integrated into a measuring device for certain vital parameters. Classifies AI systems according to risk classes. It distinguishes between the following 4 different risk classes. There are AI systems with low or no risk. They have no obligations, just optional self-regulation. AI systems with a limited risk only lead to family information obligations. High-risk AI systems have to be regulated, and a certification is required. And AI systems with an unacceptable risk are prohibited AI practice.
If you imagine a protected AI system, something like the Terminator, for example, or it also addresses systems like automatic AI-based social scoring. Just to give you a quick example. as you may have heard, medical devices and in vitro diagnostics will regularly be regarded as high-risk AI systems. So why is that? The AI Act actually contains two conditions under which an AI system is classified as a high-risk system. And the first condition has two alternatives. First alternative is that the AI system is for use as a safety component of a product, which basically means that the AI system performs some kind of safety relevant function in the medical device or in vitro diagnostic. The second alternative of the first condition is that the AI system is itself a device covered by the MDR or the IVDR, so that the AI system and the device are actually the same. If this first condition is met by fulfilling either the first or the second alternative, then a second condition is required for the classification as a high-risk AI system, and this is that a third-party conformity assessment by a notified body is necessary for the respective device. And that is the case for medical devices upwards from classes 1S, 1M, and 1R. So only the pure class 1 medical devices fall out of that requirement, and all in vitro diagnostics from class B upwards. So only the class 1 devices are excluded. So if these two conditions are met, then we have a high-risk AI system. And before preparing this webinar, we thought about the potential product, if there is a product that is classified, for example, in class 1 and does not fulfill any of the alternatives under the first condition, we could hardly think of a product that actually runs software and an AI system and does not fall under the two conditions. So we think that in the end, there will hardly be a medtech device with AI that is not a high-risk AI system. So if you want to check whether your device is a high-risk AI system or how it is to be classified under the AI Act, then you can download and open our white paper. Apart from 20 questions and answers to relevant topics of the magic triangle, it also contains a test scheme, one-pager in Annex 1, and you can run your device through this test scheme, and then you get out the classification of the device under the AI Act.
So back to our use cases. Both of them, Neoplasky and Blusser, are high-risk systems within the meaning of the AI Act. Neoplasky fulfills the first condition. It is an AI-supported diagnostic software. It exhausts itself in the AI system and falls within the scope of the MDR. And also the second condition is fulfilled. As a standalone software, Neoplasky no longer falls under Class 1 of the MDR and must therefore be subject to a conformity assessment by a third party. So it's not sufficient for the manufacturer to execute such an assessment itself. Blusser is also a high-risk system. The AI system is embedded in Blusser and assumes safety relevant tasks. It is intended to evaluate blood pressure values and thus detect the pathological conditions, which serves the safety of the patient. A malfunction could put the patient's health at risk if they rely on the information provided by the Blusser. So, in our opinion, the AI software in the Blusser should therefore be classified as a safety component. So the first condition is fulfilled here. And also the second one is Blusser is a Class 2A blood pressure monitor and therefore requires a conformity assessment by a third party.
So what exactly are the regulatory requirements that are imposed by the AI Act on medical devices and in vitro diagnostics with AI systems? So here's a list of the most important regulatory requirements, and I assume that most of them will be very familiar to you. First of all, a risk management system with AI specifics is required under Article 9 of the AI Act. There are also high requirements on the training data to ensure that they are appropriate. Fabian will tell us a little bit more about that later. Under Article 10 of the AI Act, a technical documentation with AI specifics is required, and it is important to have a technical enablement of automatic recording of events. So that is required in order to actually see how the product operated in detail. There are certain transparency and information obligations towards users under Article 13 of the AI Act. Effective human supervision must be enabled by the product, so a product that completely operates by itself and doesn't allow for effective human supervision would not be compliant with the AI Act. An appropriate level of accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity is required under the AI Act, and you will be familiar with that as well. AI systems require an authorized representative and a quality management system. So basically, for companies in the medtech business, this is good news. Imagine you're a car manufacturer or an IT company and you have to deal with the AI regulation under the AI Act. It's completely new for you with all these different features, but as a medtech company, you know all these features. AI regulation is very similar to medical device and IVD regulation under the MDR or the IVDR. This is because when the European Union, when they introduced the first AI Act of the world with the so-called AI Act, they did not invent everything anew. What they did is they took the regulatory requirements and the regulatory provisions from the MDR and more or less copied them over into the AI Act and adapted them a little bit to match the AI requirements. So if you want to put it like that, the MDR was the blueprint for the AI Act. So that is a good news for you because you're already familiar with the basics of the AI regulation by being expert or by being aware of the medical device and in vitro diagnostic regulatory affairs. And the basic structures for additional requirements such as risk management system, technical documentation requirements, quality management, all these things generally exist already in medical technology companies, so they just need to be adapted to the AI requirements, but they don't, it's not necessary to set them up anew. And so what has to be done in order to become compliant with the AI Act is just to take all these structures that are usually already present and add the additional requirements under the AI Act, take them into account and enhance the systems with the respective requirements.
Yeah, so if the requirements of the MDR or IVDR are already fulfilled, for example, with regard to risk management, technical documentation, conformity assessment, certification, etc., these MDR, IVDR related requirements are also deemed to be fulfilled under the AI Act and no longer need to be tested or verified separately. So only the requirements of the AI Act for the AI system of the medical device or IVD must be complied with in addition. In concrete terms, this means that suppliers of medical devices with AI systems must comply with both requirements, those of the MDR and the AI Act, but only have to perform one common conformity assessment procedure. In this procedure, both regulatory approaches are taken into account.
So one question remains, can the AI Act solve current certification problems? If at the moment you're having medical devices and IVD on the market that use AI, you may have run into some problems with notified bodies for the certification of these devices, because in our experience, notified bodies are often quite reluctant to certify medical devices or IVD with dynamic or black box AI. This is basically because it's difficult in such systems to determine an actual benefit risk profile of the product, because the product is dynamic, not static. And this dynamization of the mode of operation leads as a consequence to the situation that we do not have a fixed setup of a product anymore when it comes on the market. So AI medical devices and AI IVD are by their nature somewhat dynamic, and their profiles constantly change due to the AI learning, due to the AI adapting to certain situations and applying its own knowledge. And this often leads to assessment and certification problems under the MDR and IVDR, because both of these acts are actually designed to work with more or less static products. So is the AI Act perhaps the solution to this dilemma? The AI Act contains specific regulatory requirements for risk assessment and risk control of dynamic AI systems. So this is exactly what is currently still lacking in the MDR and the IVDR. So it adds those missing AI specifics to the existing MDR and IVDR regulations. And by providing requirements for the specifications on data quality, working methods, transparency, and risk control for AI, we believe that it will, or it can be possible using the AI Act together with the MDR and the IVDR as it is foreseen in these regulatory provisions, that this can close the gaps left open by the MDR and the IVDR in relation to AI systems in medical devices and in IVD. Fabian,
thank you.
We'll take over now.
Thank you, Afra and Oliver. So when we talk about medical devices, AI and regulation, one topic must never be forgotten, namely data protection, the really hot shit in this triangle. And no AI-driven medical device can be trained without a decent database. I think that's clear. Be it the original training of an AI, be it the further training of an AI, keyword is secondary use of health data, a topic that is currently of particular concern to our clients, or be it the live use of a medical device in hospital. Problem, or rather challenge, is health data is subject to a very strict regulatory regime in the GDPR. Apart from the legal basis of consent, there's very limited scope for processing personal data without consent. On the other hand, it is not recommended to base business models on the legal basis of consent, especially in the mass market, since consent can be withdrawn by the data subject at any time. An additional challenge is that we have AI-specific risks, high amount of data that might contradict to the principle of data minimization and the possible lack of transparency that might contradict to the principle of transparency. So it is not an easy situation to deal with, but here comes the good news. It can certainly be dealt with if you follow the basic principles of data protection. So my message and our message is data protection is no barrier to AI. What's important? The basics as often. Identify data streams, understand and explain what happens to the data and where the data comes from, who receives access to data, when and for what purposes, do I have the legal basis for every step of data processing, and very important, can I present to my customers, which are hospitals, university clinics, with good data protection documentation that in turn enables my customers to fulfill their own data protection compliance. These are often the key issues that need to be clarified. And if you manage to do the basics, you will get a very good handle on data protection, and there's a good chance that your data protection compliance can even be a unique selling point for your product. Next slide, Oliver, please. So who has to fulfill the requirements of the GDPR? Clear answer, this always depends on the role you have under data protection law. Within the GDPR, there are three main players. First, the controller, second, the processor, or third, the processor, and second, the joint controller. And the GDPR states that the controller, as the primary addressee of data protection obligations, is the person that determines the purposes and means of data processing. And the processor processes the data on behalf of the controller, and only, and this is really important, and only on behalf of the controller and not for its own purposes. Next slide, please. Applied to the context of medical technology, it would usually be the case that the training phase of an AI-supported medical device is typically the responsibility of the manufacturer. During the use phase, for example, when treating a patient in the hospital regularly takes on the role of controller, and the manufacturer can take on the role of a processor, for example, if it processes personal data, for example, cloud-based and or through remote maintenance work on behalf of the controller. So it really becomes exciting when the processor uses data for its own purposes, for example, to train the AI. In this case, the classic framework, as explained above, is broken and the manufacturer falls into the role of a controller. And in this case, one exciting question is whether this leads to separate or joint controllership of the parties involved. On the part of the data protection authorities, the tendency is towards joint controllership, Article 26 GDPR, which has the effect, inter alia, that a joint controllership agreement is required, which is not always easy in practice. As a key requirement, it is very important that all parties involved obtain a very clear picture of the allocation of roles under the GDPR or other different data protection laws, and map these roles accordingly in the contract. Otherwise, what we see often in practice is that this can lead to confusion or even chaos in the structure. Next slide, please. So I think there is. Can you go back? Sorry. Yes, I'm still on this slide. Sorry, Oliver. So manufacturers are always interested in the question, which data sets can I feed to my AI, especially for training purposes? Where do I get the data from, and do I obtain the data in a lawful manner? I described the initial situation regarding Article 9, which places very strict requirements on the processing of health data. And if we look at Article 9 GDPR, few legal bases for training an AI come into consideration per se. First and foremost, as said, consent. This is obviously the easiest legal basis to fulfill. The problem is, and the practical problem is, consent can be freely revoked at any time. And what do you do if consent is withdrawn? It is very difficult to base your business model on consent, as said. So we should therefore think of alternative legal basis, namely Article 9, para 2, litera I, in conjunction with para 22 of the German data protection law, which comes into consideration. This states that processing is permitted if it is necessary for reasons of public interest, such as to ensure high standards of quality and safety in healthcare and for medicinal products and medical devices. In this respect, there is certainly room for argumentation, but certainly not for every data processing, and especially not for every type of product development and marketing issues. The other possible alternative of legal base is Article 9, para 2, litera J GDPR in conjunction with para 27, which also comes into play. According to this, processing is permitted if the processing is necessary for scientific or historical research purposes. So why not to argue that the training of an AI serves scientific and research purposes? The bad news is that data protection authorities tend to argue that this legal basis is not possible when it comes to purely commercial sales research. In other words, they say earning money contradicts with research purposes, which from our point of view are very good arguments to attack this position, because the purpose of training an AI in a medical device is to advance health, as we all know. And therefore, in many cases, this should also be recognized as a scientific activity, even though there are, of course, also monetary motivations, as always or often in this world. So as a result, in many cases, the legal basis of consent is the most obvious one on one hand. However, we recommend to sometimes consider the more daring or risky way, and that consent is not always required. So in addition, and last point on this slide, in addition to the legal basis, the general data protection principles as listed on the right hand side must always be complied with. Next slide, please. So anonymization and pseudonymization, very big topic in the healthcare sector as well. The best way to be data protection compliant is not to process any personal data at all. And to do this, the data must be anonymized. And the challenge here is that there's a very fine line often between pseudonymized data, and therefore still personal data, and anonymized data on the other hand. As the European Court of Justice stated in a very recent decision from 2023, the perspective of the recipient of the data is decisive for assessing whether it is personal data or not. This means that if the recipient, for example, the manufacturer, the medical manufacturer, has neither the factual possibilities nor the legal possibilities to link the pseudonymized data to a natural person, to a patient, the data is anonymous to them. And this opens up a very extremely interesting scope for argumentation in the healthcare industry to work with pseudonymized data. However, we will have to wait a little longer to see whether this legal opinion of the European Court is confirmed by the European Court of Justice. So the judgment is not final yet, and there are still legal risks in this respect. However, again, it can be worth to use this scope for argumentation that the European Court has given us in favor of yourself and your business model. Each company must, of course, decide for itself and always weigh up the risks on a case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. And this is almost my last slide regarding data protection, AI, and transparency. This may clash with data protection because one of the basic principles of the GDPR is that personal data must be processed transparently. This is one big principle in the GDPR. This may clash with the black box concept or alleged black box concept of an AI. However, a reasonable approach can be that not every single data processing step of an AI needs to be explained in every technical detail. You don't do that when you use normal software either. Otherwise, this would possibly lead to the exact opposite of transparency. So it also should be noted that the opinions of the data protection authorities, which are critical of the alleged lack of transparency of AI, relate to the use of generative language models. However, AI models and systems in the healthcare sector may work differently and be somewhat simpler in terms of their purpose, which means that the authorities' concerns about transparency are not necessarily transferable to the medical sector. Nevertheless, the recommendation is also for your economic reasons to make your own product as attractive as possible. On the one hand, describe as transparently as possible on how your AI works and for what purposes it processes data and how. On the other hand, be prepared to, at some stage, go for some risks as above and don't get too caught up in the technical details. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to advertise, as Oliver and Afra, our white paper, which also describes one or two aspects in more detail. It also includes the data protection checklist on the formal requirements of the GDPR that you can use as a guide, and have fun with this list, with this perfect list here. And that's all I think I have to say about data protection right now. And if you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you. Oh, there's still one slide left. Oh, sorry. Yes, that's a more general slide apart from data protection regarding entry into force of the AI Act. When does it, and the timeline? When does what apply? So now we have left August 2022, which was the date at that the AI Act came into force, and now in February 2025. The first regulations on prohibited AI systems apply, and you see the timeline is moving on. If you think of the normal product lines and developments, you see that there is no much time left till August 27. And having said this, this is at the latest the perfect stage for beginning to think of everything we said today. So thank you very much, Oliver. I think Oliver and Afra, I think there is the last slide left for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I will take over here. Thank you very much, Fabian, for your wonderful presentation on data protection. Very helpful indeed, and very interesting to know. Perhaps one or two words about these timelines, August 26 and August 27. There's at the moment discussions going on whether these deadlines will actually remain, or whether these dates of entry into force of these provisions will remain, because we had a similar situation with the MDR and with the MDR timelines. In the end, it turned out that it was not possible to hold the original timelines because there were not sufficient notified bodies that were certified and that could certify the respective products and systems on time to meet the deadline requirements under the MDR. So there was a moratorium issued, and the timelines were delayed, as you know. There are discussions whether this may also happen with the AI Act, because these are very short timelines to implement the regulatory systems for the AI systems, and therefore it might well be that this may change when we are nearing the deadlines. But in order to be cautious as a company, we recommend to calculate with these deadlines and take these deadlines into account in project planning for the time being. So we will come to a wrap up. What is important for medtech companies concerning the magic triangle between MDR, IVDR regulation, AI regulation, and data protection? Key takeaways of today from our perspective are that concerning regulatory affairs, we have to think and get outside the box. Regulatory affairs is no more an MDR, IVDR island anymore. It involves, as soon as it gets into IT, as soon as it gets into AI, it involves issues of data protection, of AI regulation in the future, of IT matters. So it's become very complex, and interface and cooperation skills become key value to manage these complex regulations for the products, because it's no longer a single regulation or single set of rules that needs to be adhered to. It's a complex set of rules over several fields of law and over several fields of regulatory provisions that have to be taken into account. AI, IT, data protection, and cybersecurity are core elements of regulatory affairs in the future. And but the good news for you is AI regulation is very close to MDR regulation and can even solve MDR problems. So when people say, oh no, my God, we have another regulation to take care of, another regulatory affairs matter added to the system that we have to integrate into our regulatory affairs planning, it can even be positive because it resolves the issue that the static MDR and IVDR regulation cannot really handle dynamic AI. So there's no need to panic. Medtech companies are usually already familiar with the general system from the MDR and IVDR regulatory affairs. So it's a short step into AI regulatory matters. And as I said, it can even solve problems in some cases. What will be required concerning personnel and staff? I think in the future, to handle regulatory affairs for medtech with AI, every company will need teams of experts from different fields, in-house and consultants, in order to cover the various aspects like AI, IT, data protection, cybersecurity, and so on that are in the future needed for regulatory compliance. And therefore, and this is the really final wrap-up, companies with a holistic, multidisciplinary approach in product development and regulation can gain significant advantage in competition because they can master these requirements while others may not. And this will be something that can even add a USP to the respective products.